Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of our Business and Life Stories podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and James. Say hello, James.
Hi, everyone.
We're really excited to have Linda Tilson with us this week. And I don't want to give too much away. I'll just intro Linda by telling you what she's doing now is, if you go look at her LinkedIn profile, which you should, and look at her background and look at what she's doing now, you might wonder what I did. It's like, how in the world did she make that change? And Linda, you probably have more genuine confidence when you're helping people than anyone else I've ever met. I mean, it's amazing. So would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and how the heck you got there and where does all this confidence come from?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be on your show today. And I love the subject that we're going to get into because as a career coach, as a transformational coach, it comes up all the time. How does a person view themselves as an expert and be able to apply that knowledge to another person in a way that feels genuine to the person receiving it, but also from the person that's giving it? And so you hit upon a point that I'd like to talk to. And really, how I was able to get to the area that I am with the confidence, it wasn't something that happened right away. Just like everybody else, you think, well, what gives me the right to share this information? How is that other person going to take it? Are they going to take it as me sharing it as a know-it-all? Are they going to take it as someone that's genuinely wanting to help? How are they going to take it? And what gives me that license to do that? And really the advice I give out when I'm coaching, because it comes up in all different areas. It comes up when people are interviewing for a job. You go into a job front and you've got to show your expertise. Again, you are doing everything that you can possible to shine in that interview based on who you are and what you're going to bring to the organization. The flip side is true in your personal life. You might be speaking to somebody on an interpersonal relationship issue. Again, what gives you that space to be able to say how to deal with a certain situation? Well, honestly, I give all people that question whether or not they're an expert and whether or not they can do that is if you're giving value to another person and you're coming from a genuine space of helping them to further whatever it is and helping them get there in a quicker, faster, sometimes easier way than what you went through, well, then why not confidently express that and just go with that? And that's what I do in all of the areas of my life. Now, there's times that there are other people that are more expert than I am, but I have certain areas in my life that I'm an expert in. And why wouldn't I express that to the world? And so I encourage all other people, no matter what they're doing, whether they're going for that job or they're helping another person get through something, come with what you have and who you are and just really radiate and go there. And if you do that, then no one's going to ever question whether or not you're an expert, because they're not looking for you to be an expert. What they're looking for is for you to make a genuine connection and be caring for them in whatever they're doing. And that's what creates that space that people are looking for.
That's such a profound principle too. So I'm sure we've all seen in business, the so-called experts and gurus that they just don't click because we have no connection, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you learn how to make connections? And what are some of the things that you sort of practice or do in your daily life to help you stay in that right mind space and that right attitude so that connections can happen?
Okay, so that's a great question. And honestly, you've hit it on the head. It's about making the connection. And the way that you do that, it's by a principle that was actually taught to me later in life, but I think I embodied it anyway, but it's getting curious about another person. And so the conversation isn't about me, Linda, it's about you, Mike, and you, James. When I'm in a conversation with you, I'm asking questions of curiosity. I am really listening to hear your perspectives, because it's not about what my perspective is that we're going to have the conversation. I want to engage with you to figure out, what you have to share. What kind of gems do you have that I want to know? And so establishing the connection is really simple when you take that onus to really ask those curiosity questions and really take in and listen.
So that's really very interesting. I want to explore that a little bit more. I mean, I kind of have an advantage that many of our listeners don't, is I've seen you do this with a couple of people that I know. It's just amazing. How do you respond to people that are walled off? How do you get through those walls and sort of get them in a space where you can make a connection?
Okay, so that happens quite often, actually. I do have conversations with people that are in tough situations or they're in tough places in their life. And what really I do when I'm working with them is I'm going to acknowledge where they're at. I'm going to empathize with their situation. And I come from a place of authentic heart. So I'm not just going to say, Mike, I really understand what you're going through and just kind of, be at surface level. I'm going to go deeper than that. If anything, I'm going to be putting myself in their place, in their shoes, and think about a time where I might have experienced something that they're going through. And while the conversation's not about me, I will relay, if it's appropriate, a situation where I might have gone through something similar. And I do it in a way that a person can see that they're not by themselves, that a person can get to the other side, and that I'm here to be able to do that with them if they would like that. Because I always ask permission to go to that place about sharing. I ask permission if I'm going to talk about a pathway that they could explore. And that's really what I've done all of my life. I just will say that I've gotten better at it through more practice and through the work that I do in different areas of leadership tracks that I've taken along the way. And so I took a natural ability, got more awareness around it, got some more tools and techniques, and I've applied them throughout my future conversations.
What are some good ways that our listeners could practice and start developing these skills so that when they're in a situation like a job interview or trying to close a deal, that they're not trying to apply it on the fly, that they've got a little bit of experience? So how do you practice this kind of stuff?
So I found the best way to practice these skills is to find a person that you feel comfortable with, whether it's a peer, a friend, a coach, or a practitioner, and you ask them if they would role play with you. And role playing, when you're not used to it, might feel a little awkward. But when you're doing a sales call and you're practicing those skills, or you're practicing how you would answer, how are you a good fit for our organization in the interview setting, then it's so much easier to be able to do it when you can get that constructive feedback in that moment, because then you have the chance to course correct. And you have an opportunity that if it doesn't go in the way that you want, or you could take what you did and perfect it to another level before going into the situation, it'll make it so much easier because you don't have to be memorizing the perfect thing to say or memorizing the way to come into a situation. You have experienced it at least once. Even if it isn't a real experience and it's fictitious, you've experienced it, so it won't feel so cold going in.
So would it be fair to say it sort of becomes an inherent way that you are and a way that you think because of the role play, so that as you're walking in, because as we all know, when you go in a business situation, all sorts of unexpected things will definitely happen. What would you say is the percentage of people that try to memorize the right thing to say versus the percentage that do what you suggest and are role playing and letting it become sort of almost like second nature, like how to be this way?
I like how you've asked that, because there's always, should I memorize and practice to the extent that I know each and every iteration of what to do in the situation, or should I just go with the flow? I think it's a combination of the two, really, because if you practice it in a certain way, you can kind of logically think about the steps you could take. However, if you memorize and think about a process in a certain particular way, and that curveball is thrown at you, you'll become frozen in that moment and you won't be able to respond in the best way. So I always tell people, always go in as who you are, practice those skills with someone you trust, and don't worry or don't sweat the small stuff, because honestly, in the situations where it matters most, people just want you to come in and be authentic to who you are and not be some programmed robot or someone that the moment the interview or the business meeting is done, that all of a sudden you become this other persona. Because how hard is it to keep up that new persona that you've given people when you go into that new job or that new business relationship? They want to see the same person that you are when they met you, because that's the person they connected with. And if you come in as this other person that they didn't connect with, you may or may not have the relationship going forward that you envisioned. It may be something much different.
That's really strong. So is this part of what you teach your clients when you do your coaching? And I've heard you on your Two Perspectives podcast, sometimes talking about how to handle interviews and things like that. Is this part of what you train people to do, to be consistently be who they are and not make the mistake of trying to play a role in a situation?
It's exactly what I teach, because it's so easy to go into that persona of how you think you want the person on the other side to perceive you, how they want to take you, because there's this huge sense of wanting to belong. You want to be acknowledged. You want to continue a relationship. But if you have a relationship that's not built on an authentic connection to begin with, then it's going to be disappointing in the future for everyone, really.
Wow, that's really strong. I hope everybody's taking notes, and if you haven't, you can rewind this and write that down. So as I understand it, your background had something to do with accounting, or that
Yes.
area. You don't come across as a typical cliched accountant that everybody thinks when they hear the word accountant. So what prompted this miraculous change into this vibrant, interesting, coach that helps people? I mean, that's a pretty big change.
Well, I think that the whole idea of service to others, that happens in accounting. But what has changed or transformed me over the years of service is you come in on the ground level doing more of the transactional work in accounting, but then it grows to something more because you become this manager or supervisor where you're leading projects, you're leading teams. And so when you're leading projects and teams, then you go into programs that develop your communication and your relationship skills. And in a lot of ways, for me, because I do accounting, that's very logical. It's also very logical for me to work in the area of project management. and actually, I was very surprised at my very first project management course when I realized it was less about all of the intricate pieces along the way that fit together to take a project from beginning to end. It was all about the people. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, no wonder I relate to this in that way. It has this very logical side to it, a progression of how you take something from beginning to end. But at the same time, if you don't have the relationship skills and the communication skills to inspire a vision and to let everyone know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And so I guess that would be why that, I have this detail-oriented being able to take relationships and patterns in data, but I also take relationships and patterns in people. And when you take the two worlds together, they're more alike than they are different.
Wow, that's really, really great. I'm loving this. Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the funny things you've heard in business, or the silly things, or just anything you want to share that you thought was really unusual.
Okay, so funny things in business. Well, I guess one thing that I've always seen as interesting is if you can look at life as a game of Tetris, as you're always taking the pieces and seeing where they can fit and go. If you can master that, you can master anything.
Oh, wow. I am taking notes. I hope the rest of y'all listening to this are taking notes. This is great. So this is a part of the show where we let James ask all his off the wall questions. I'm the former engineer, numbers nerdy guy, and James is the very, he can talk to people. So anyway, take it away, James.
Hi there, Linda. I think, do you think people, relating back to how this conversation started, about feeling able to provide value, and that value really comes from active listening, connecting, holding the space and asking almost intuitive questions related to the conversation. Do you think people kind of get concerned about or get mixed up or get the two intertwined, that of being a mentor and that of being a coach? Because they're two quite different skill sets, different experiences, and different requirements, aren't they?
Oh, that's a very good question, because there is a distinct difference between a mentor and a coach. And so the mentor is someone, this is how I define it, is someone that has in one area or another, maybe several, they've gone a certain direction and they have become those experts in those areas. And so the role of the mentor really is to expose the person sitting on the opposite side of them to some of those areas based on that mentee's interest. And so the mentor is not going to guide the conversation. The mentor is going to put out some pathways or things that a person might consider, and they will encourage them to go try and see what that looks like. And they'll support them in whatever that is, whether it's, they could do a role play, they could connect them to another person, they could do a number of things. The difference is the coach, when you're working with them, there's not so much of the option to take or not to take. So a mentor gives you the option to take or not take a path. The coach is going to give you options that you can take, but they're going to say, pick one path and let's go explore it. The choice isn't usually to not pick, to do anything, to not do anything. And so that would be what the major difference is. But they do have the same role, which is to put different thoughts out there and allow the person to drive. That they both do that. It's just the coach is going to want to ensure that the person actually makes some progress to get somewhere. The mentor wants that, but it's not the mentor's job to make sure that happens. It's the mentor's job to put that out there and be that resource.
Absolutely, and that's such a great explanation. I sometimes, and I'm by no means degrading a mentor's role, but a mentor in some ways I feel is kind of surface level. It's where all the experiences, it's where the strategies are, it's where the game plans are, it's where the blueprint is. And I'm not sure, and I'll pass you over this for a discussion, but for me, coaching is about supporting the other person in them finding and recognizing the internal blocks, which actually might stop them from taking those strategies. Because as we all know from our lives and from people we know and clients and whatnot, someone can have the best roadmap, the best strategies, the best systems in the world, but if there are internal blocks, they're always, for instance, relating to self-worth, perhaps, which relates to the first bit of our conversation. That's always going to, it's a cognitive, but the cognitive biases and the limiting beliefs, which I feel there's a lot of value with in the coaching relationship, isn't there, to explore those and to dissolve them.
You're right. There could be a situation where the mentor could be more at that surface level. I guess I'm just, blessed that I've played both roles, both the coach and the mentor, so I get to go to that deeper level. But you're right. Not all mentors are going to get as immersed in that other person's experience. Someone that's doing the coaching, they have that training and that know-how and that desire, and they're going to definitely get there. And that's where I was making this distinction, because I think they both have the same goal, but I think the coaches, their job is to ensure that you get to that end goal. I mean, if you think about it in sporting, then I mean, your coach is going to make sure that you get that goal, or you get that touchdown, or you get that, block. Whereas the mentor can be the cheerleader and can be the support, but they may or may not do the full circle to ensure the person gets there. But being that I've played both roles, that's not an option. I'm going to make sure that you get to that end game, and you do it with all the support and guidance and tools that you could possibly have. I'm going to go deep with you.
And then I guess my final question, which came to mind, and just because I've had experience coaching in the past, and I love the way that can be brought into a sales conversation, not so much as coaching, but just having it as a background observational paradigm. But it's like, do you feel that there's more need for coaches now more than ever? Just because, as you said, almost the more important part of a coach is being able to hold the space, to make the connection, to listen, to actively listen. And although obviously human beings have always had distractions to a certain extent, there's a lot of concern about social media and our attention spans and everything being available for us 24/7 and flitting between things. Do you think there's a greater need than ever for people to step up and embrace the role of a coach, in so much as giving someone their attention for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, doing the question asking and then listening to the answers? Because even within a family dynamics, that can be quite hard to achieve, can't it? With
You
busy
asked
lives.
a really great question, and the answer is yes, coaching is needed now more than ever. And I will say the pandemic has made it rise to the surface, but it happened long before the pandemic. It happened because of the digital age that we're in. Everybody is available 24/7. Pandemic hits, it amplifies it. And then I just will find that people are lacking in how to build relationships and how to effectively communicate. And unless somebody has taken that care to show you how to do those two things, it's going to affect everything. And so it's going to affect the family structure. It's going to affect your interpersonal relationships. And it's also going to affect business, because if you don't have those skills going into the working world, and now it's the virtual working world, it's gonna come at a place where you're gonna feel like you're lost, or like you don't really know how best to work with another individual. And so, I mean, one of the things that happens is, as people are working virtually, it's like, how do you know that they're doing the things that they're paid to do? Well, and then if, let's say you question whether or not they're doing that thing you want them to be doing, well, then how do you have that conversation? I mean, that's a real thing, is how that's come up in organizations, is about how do you gauge the work that's being performed? And I say there's different ways of doing it, and let me teach you how to do that. It's not about the hour for hour, it's about the outputs that you do and the quality that goes in them. And your customers are going to tell you if the things aren't getting done. There's other metrics. That's just one thing. And then I guess the other thing is getting cooperation. In the virtual space, really hard to talk to another person. Let's say if you're waiting on them for your thing so you can take it on to the next level, that's a normal thing. That's common in most organizations and businesses. And so people are reluctant to talk to another person because they're not actually sitting in front of them to get those verbal cues. And it's like, you can still receive them. You just have to be looking while you're listening and know how to ask in a way that's non-threatening, and be able to be curious about what's going on. Because the last thing that people are always afraid to have those conversations, because they don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to be misunderstood, they don't want to come down too hard on, all these different reasons of why you went and talked to somebody. And so learning to communicate effectively will ultimately make your relationships that much stronger and richer. And so those two, when you combine them together, when you're in the workspace, then that also lends to leadership. Whether you are a title or not makes no difference. Everyone can be a leader. And And then, and again, the skill set is how do you communicate and how do you nurture your relationships?
And, really glad you could join us tonight, Linda, with this. We've got time for one more question from James.
Okay.
But before I close out, I just want to say, all you listeners, Linda is an absolute master artist at the art of connecting. This is somebody you want to look up, and this is somebody you want to learn from. All right, James, can you take us out with a final question, sir?
Yeah, the final thought was that I think we're all of a similar generation here, and school was all about subjects, and yet, as we all know, wouldn't it be great if the younger generation, and maybe you have some experience here, but wouldn't it be great if the younger generation could have like an like entrepreneurship in a box, sort of all those communication skills, a little bit about personalities, a little bit about public speaking, a little bit about psychology and body language, and like just a little kit. It's a survival kit, and it wouldn't just relate to business really. It would be, as you said, spousal relationships, family relationships, etc., etc. What do you think about that? I mean, for me, it'd be an amazing future if the younger generation could be offered some of these skills, which we've taken sort of decades of trial and error to acquire.
I absolutely agree that the young people that are coming through the ranks should have that toolkit that you described. And you're right, it doesn't have to necessarily be the entrepreneurial toolkit, but just life 101. How do you succeed in your personal and professional life? and because I actually work with a lot of young people, and a lot of them could be entrepreneurs and aspiring business leaders. That's definitely there, but not everyone does that. So I like the idea of having the coaches come in and be the lives of young people, because I have 3 kids. So I have one that's 19, almost 16, and 11. So I actually use that life 101. I teach them how to effectively communicate. I teach them how to build their relationships. And I even teach them, if you're interested in something and you want to know more about it, go explore. And I take them out there to do it. I have a ton of stories of things that I've done so they could find out what lights them up. So when they become these older versions of themselves, they might have some ideas that they might want to explore.
Fantastic.
Wow, that's really great. All right, thank you so much for being here, Linda. Can't wait to have you back again.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to come back, working with you and answering these questions and putting all these things out for people to consider as other perspectives. I'd love to do it.